What's up, guys? Wade Willis here for my playthrough of Umineko. This is Chapter 3. I'm in Part 11. Things have gotten real wild. We have the Chyster sisters. I don't know if I pronounce it right, but they're the cute girls with bunny ears. I've seen them on some of the ads for things. They are just straight badass. They came into this and are helping Ava Beatrice, and were able to take out Kyrie and Rudolph pretty easily, and Kyrie and Rudolph were actually able to take out two of the Purgatory sisters. Difference in power between them is quite frightening, and there's kind of this power dynamic between Beatrice and Ava Beatrice. Beatrice is starting to get kind of like upset with how Ava is doing things, and Ava's like just a natural with her magical skills. So it's not looking good for the family and everyone involved, and even the original Beatrice, or the one that we know of and love. And yeah, guys, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Go. The beautiful hall of the Ushiromiya mansion was covered with golden sparkle like a gold leaf, and stained deep red with thick spurts of blood. Ugh. The number of deaths given to Rudolph and Kyrie had long surpassed anything you could count on both your fingers and your toes. Jesus. The witch was breathing so hard her shoulders shook, but it wasn't because she was tired. She just couldn't hide her ragged breasts caused by her still uncontainable excitement. Yo, this girl's crazy. Like, my question is, if this is like draining regular Ava of her vitality, the amount of magic she's using, won't that kill Ava?
私は指を一つ鳴らすだけで元通りにして蘇らせることができる。そして最後に、申し訳程度に碑文に沿った死体に戻せばいいんだからね。ねえ、あんたたち、ぬいぐるみのお腹を裂いたことってある？ないです。45は
I like 410.
やったことありません。申し訳ありません。当然よ。普通ないわ。ましてや、お気に入りのぬいぐるみだったらなおさらよね。でもずっと思ってた。
What a psycho.
こんなにも大好きで、ふかふかのぬいぐるみの中には何が詰まってるんだろう。
This is obviously before Build-A-Bear.
いつか覗いてみたいってずっと思ってたわ。
If you cut it and look inside, your curiosity might be quelled, but the stuffed animal will be broken. So even though you want to see it, you can't. You understand that feeling, right?
無限の魔女の力はまさにそれを叶えてくれる力なの。今の私は好きなだけぬいぐるみを裂くことができる。なのに魔法一つでそれを元通りに蘇らせることができるわ。それはつまりこの世のあらゆる制約を打ち破ったということ。今の私には躊躇することも思いとどまることも何もないの。その喜び、無限の魔女の私以外誰にもわからない。
As the witch let out a mad war cry, she revived Rudolph and Kyrie again, and faster than they could realize that she killed them right away. And she made it know that something other than cotton was stuffed inside those two.
予算かエヴァ。
あんたいたの。
That gruesome hall, Hideyoshi appeared with his gun ready. The witch had sealed the mansion with a barrier, so Hideyoshi had nowhere to run. He probably picked up Rudolph and Kirie's gun and came back. The gun, which should have been something to be feared, was apparently no longer an object she took seriously now that she was overflowing with magical power. Her bold expression didn't flinch in the slightest.
なんでローザさんやマリアちゃんやルドルフ君やキリエさんまで殺さにゃならんのや。
はあ？私は後宮家の当主にして六軒島の魔女よ。この島では何を起こそうと全ては自由自在。今だけの一瞬を切り取ってその生き死にを問うなど私には無意味なこと。
お父さんの黄金を見つけてどんだけ高く積まれた黄金やったやろな。わしには想像もつかん。お前の死を気を失わせるほどのものだったんやろ。だがな、そんなにもたくさんの黄金やったならなして気前よく分けっこしたろって思わんかったんや。
誤解してるわ。あれは全て黄金の魔女のものよ。私以外の誰にも触れる資格はない。
お前は何や？昔聞かせてくれた少女時代の魔女だったエヴァだとでも言うんか？
そうよ。あなたの妻の後宮エヴァの胸の中にずーっと住んでいた。そして魔女なの。エヴァは私を忘れることによって大人になったわ。だから魔法が使えない。
誰だって子供の頃には無邪気だけれど残酷な妄想に頭を膨らませることはある。わしかて小さい頃はアリを踏んで回ったりトンボの羽をむしったりして遊んだことがあるわ。しかし命の大切さを学んでそんな残酷な幼年時代から卒業するんや。今のお前はまさに幼年時代そのものやで。エヴァが卒業したはずの人格なんや。それはエヴァやない。別の人間や。
It's not even human.
そうよ。私、後宮エヴァじゃない。黄金の魔女、ベアトリーチェだもの。楽しいわよ。何の制約もしがらみもなく、生き死にを自由にできるこの閲楽は本当に素敵。割った金魚鉢を謝らなくていい。そして、好きなだけぬいぐるみを裂いていい。私は。
There was a crisp sound. It was the sound of Hideyoshi slapping the witch's face. I thought he was going to shoot her. Looking at the hall stained deep red with flesh blood, he should have been able to imagine how terrible the witch was. But without fear, without even hesitating, Hideyoshi had walked determinedly up to her and hit her on the cheek.
アホ！残酷ぶるなや。ほんまは臆病者の弱虫のくせに。
Dang.
わしがまた更生させたるわ。このシャワルが。このアホ！アホ！
痛い。ちょっと！
命の大切さとか、儚さとか、そういうのが分かる女やったのだ。わしが思い出させたる。何が魔女や。アホ抜かせ。
Is he trying to smack the witch out of her?
お前はわしの女房の後宮エヴァや。冷蔵庫の残り物でちょいちょいと気の利いたつまみを作れる台所の魔女が先の山や。目を覚まさんかい、このアホンだらが。
He's probably gonna die though, huh?
だから、後宮エヴァじゃないって言ってるでしょうか。
アホ抜かせ。この
As tears dripped down his face, Hideyoshi kept hitting the witch's head. He wasn't even pointing the gun at her anymore. Therefore, that sound of gunfire couldn't have come from the gun Hideyoshi was holding. Oh, did he revive? The gun which had fallen in the corner near Rudolph's corpse was floating in the air. Its smoke lingered near the barrel. And the bullet? A red stain was slowly spread across the chest section in Hideyoshi's vest. Even though his back was facing the barrel of the gun, the bullet had driven through Hideyoshi's chest. Who the hell shot him? Was it her?
バカでうざい男ね。あんたしつこいから、第6の番の生贄に変更してあげるわ。どこかのベッドの下に隠れて震えてでもいたなら見逃してやるつもりだったのに。わざわざ戻ってきて。本当にバカな男だわ。
There's a dull sound as Hideyoshi fell to the floor. Even though death would have allowed him to escape from that pain, he resisted until the last second, and staring straight into the witch's eyes, he passed away. Because he had died without closing his eyes, the witch didn't realize he was dead for a short while, and remained pinned by that gaze.
こいつも新しいおもちゃにして遊びますにひ
At those words, the witch finally realized Hideyoshi was dead.
あ、そうね。どうしようかしら。
The Chiser sisters waited for instructions. On the inside, they imagined the sorts of more brutal orders their master might give. But the expression that rose to the witch's face looked as though she'd gotten over her excitement. She looked down at Hideyoshi's face, which still had tears dripping down it.
この男のせいですっかり興ざめだわ。もうやめた。ラノウェイ、いる？
はい、ここに。
後片付けをお願い。先代様もうるさいしね。あのババアが納得する程度に綺麗にしておいてちょうだい。一応、先代様への義理で儀式のルールには従うわ。この3人の死体を第4の番から第6の番ってことでお願いね。ルシファー、出番よ。傲慢のルシファー、ここに。その3人の死体、ほじくってえぐっといて。死体よですか？そうよ。何か不満？いえ。
The seven sisters of Purgatory had their own sort of pride. It was the pride of a hunter and the pride of gouging their prey that they had brought down themselves. However, being told to gouge a corpse that someone else had brought down ran contrary to their sentiment. Of course, the witch didn't mean it that way, but for the seven sisters it was horribly humiliating. However, they had already screwed this up, with two of the sisters defeated, so they had no right to question her. Only Ronov appreciated this, as he rested his hand on her shoulder in understanding.
ベアトリーチェ様のご命令ですよ。ルシファーは3人を選び、儀式の作法に従い処理をするように。あと、できましたら私のお片付けにも手を貸してください。
かしこまりました。
The witch looked down upon Hideyoshi's corpse as though implying that the now delicate atmosphere was all Hideyoshi's fault.
バカな男ね。死なずに済んだのに。あなた
Damn.
あなた、どこ
It really sucks to be real Ava right now.
返事をして
The crash of a thunderbolt woke Ava from her nightmare. If Hideyoshi had been gripping her hand at that time, her fearful heart would have probably been instantly healed. However, Hideyoshi, who had supposedly sworn that he wouldn't leave her, even for a moment, was nowhere to be seen in the room.
あなた、返事をして。あなた。
Damn. 30 minutes had already passed since Rudolph's group had left the guest house. By any measure, their return was too late, and Kraus and Natsui, who had waited by the entrance, were reaching the limits of their patience. The chain was set on the door. That was a precaution in the event that Rudolph's group was attacked and the master key stolen from them. For that reason, they needed to wait by the entrance like this for the others to return.
さすがに遅すぎます。彼らの身に何かあったのでは?
Yeah, they did, homie. Kraus glanced between his watch and the door, struggling to keep his composure.
もし彼らが戻らないようなことがあるならば。
辛い想像だが、その覚悟を始めた方が良さそうだ。やはり不用心だったんだ。
私はそうだと申し上げました。なぜ彼らはこれほどの危険を承知で外に。
You need food though with that many people.
愚かなことです。
I don't know.
ローザさんが襲われたばかりだというのに、なぜに外へ。
それを言っても始まらん。とにかくこれでゲストハウスに大人は3人。私と夏希、そして高熱で寝込んでいるエヴァだけだ。
At that time, the forceful sound of the door being opened came from the hallway, as they heard Ava's panicked voice. That voice kept calling Hideyoshi's name. It seemed as though she had a bad dream or something due to her fever, and was calling for her husband.
エヴァさん、どうしましたか？大丈夫ですか？うちの人はどこ？うちの人がいないの。ずっと一緒にいるって約束してくれたのに。ずっと手を握ってくれてるって約束したのに。
Cress was struck dumb by the attitude of hers, which she had never known in front of him before, but Natsui understood her feelings.
落ち着いて。秀吉さんはルドルフさんたちと一緒に今表へ出ています。表へ？どうしてよ。私とずっと一緒にいてくれるって約束したのに、どうして表になんか行ってるの？表へ出てはダメ。表には魔女がいるわ。行ってはダメ。殺されてしまう。
Well, this is gonna help with the whole witch thing.
エヴァ、落ち着きなさい。秀吉さんはルドルフたちと一緒に屋敷へ戻っているのだ。
What?
どうして屋敷に行かなくちゃいけないのよ。ここなら安全なのに、どうして表になんか出したのよ。どうして屋敷なんかに戻ったのよ。
明日までの食料を取りに行くことになったのだ。秀吉さんはお前の体調が悪いことを気にしてて、そのためにもと言って。
Probably not the best
いつ戻っ
thing.
てくるの？いつ戻ってくるのよ。表はダメよ。バラ庭園はダメ。屋敷はダメ。魔女がいる。黄金の魔女が歩き回ってる。見つかったら殺されてしまう。絶対に殺されてしまう。ああ、うちの人はいつ戻ってくるの。
There's only how many more need to be killed?
30分前にここを出ました。
3?
私たちは帰りを待っています。30分？そんなのおかしいじゃない。屋敷に行って食料を取って帰ってくるのに、どうしてそんなに時間がかかるのよ。それであんたたちはなんでここでぼんやりしてるのよ。迎えに行かなきゃ。
Oh god.
早くあの人のところへ行かなきゃ。
Ava probably had quite a nightmare, and because it continued even after she woke up, she had no longer hid her panic. Natsui tried calming her down, but all it did was make Ava's emotions explode even more. Maybe they heard that disturbance. Battler and the kids who were supposedly been on the second floor were peeking their faces through the crack of the lobby door. Kraus, Natsui, Ava, and Battler, George, Jessica, and Nanjo. Everyone in the guest house had gathered by the entrance and understood the current situation.
母さんの意見に同感だよ。父さんたちの様子を確かめに行くべきだ。
まあ、そうだな。荷物が大きくなって手間取ってる可能性だってあるぜ。人手は歓迎のはずさ。
Everyone should have gone in the first
ロー
place.
ザさんが襲われてすぐですぞ。二次遭難の可能性もあります。
ここは一つ慎重に。
Okay, you old fat man.
バカを言わないで。慎重に何よ。助けを求めてるかもしれない主人を見殺しにしろというの。私が様子を見に行くわ。臆病者はここで待っていなさい。
Looking agitated, Ava raised her gun. Judging by her face, it would be useless for anyone to try and stop her. George, who realized that first, raised his head.
僕も行こう。バトラ君も来るだろう。人数が多い方がいい。
Mm-hmm.
エヴァおばさん、来るなって言ったってついてくぜ。
私も行くよ。私だけ安全なところに隠れてなんかいられないぜ。ジェシカは出てはなりません。ここに私といるのです。
No.
良いですね。
She ain't gonna listen. It was like they were implying that those three had already been killed anyways, so to go outside would be pointless. Natsui realized that Ava felt like her heart had been gouged out, but she spoke out strongly against Jessica's mother.
そうね。それがいいでしょうね。兄さんたち一家はゲストハウスで留守番してて。これはうちの家族とバトラ君の家族の問題よ。あと南條先生も来てもらえるかしら。万が一のこともあるかもしれないから。
Have any murders happened in the guests? Oh, jeez.
バトラ、エヴァ、ジョージ、南條の4人は屋敷のホールにて、ルドルフ、キリエ、秀吉の3人の遺体を発見。
第4から第6の番ってことか。なら死体には、額、胸、腹にそれぞれ、例の悪魔の杭が。
はい。ルドルフの額に1本、秀吉の胸に1本、そしてキリエの腹部に1本、悪魔の杭が打ち込まれ、3人には争ったか、あるいは逃げ回るかしたと思われる着衣の乱れがあります。3人の遺体は寄り添ってはおらず、犯人と遭遇後、ある程度の抵抗を試みたと推定されます。
杭で、額と胸と腹を、相変わらず、無芸。
Even though Ronov knew it would be superfluous, he contemplated telling Battler the truth. Normally, the witch would have killed them in a much more horrible way. The corpses had been left in this manner only because Beato had suggested to the witch that she show restraint. The new witch, thinking it would fit well enough as long as she gouged them with stakes, would probably have just stuck a stake in a lump of meat that wasn't even shaped like a human. Rosa's and Maria's corpses were a particularly striking example. If they had been killed as the Golden Witch wished, just how gruesome would the corpses have been? Beato had changed that into the still better kind of killing Battler had mentioned earlier. Wanting to have Beato's small bit of thoughtfulness appreciated, he thought of telling Battler this. But judging Battler's eyes, that might do more harm than good. To humans, the gap between being alive and dead is very large. Saying that she'd given them better deaths might have made it possible for a demon to understand her feelings and pardon her, but there was no way a human would be so accepting. Understanding this, Ronov remained silent despite knowing Beato's modest efforts.
いつも通り、死体の死亡確認からさせてもらうぜ。ロノウェ、赤で宣言を頼む。おい、聞こえないのか？赤で宣言を頼む。副賞要求だ。ルドルフ、キリエ、秀吉の3名は死亡している。
申し訳ございません。副賞を拒否させていただきます。
は
あ。なんだと？いきなり、どういうつもりだ？
By now, proclaiming that the victims were dead and red was almost given in this battle. Refusing to do so was almost like losing by default. So when Ronov refused as part of his first move, Battler was dumbfounded.
申し訳ございません。私めのお嬢様の代行者である資格をこれをもって返上させていただきます。よって 私には、それを赤で復唱することができません。それを復唱する資格があるのは、お嬢様、ただ一人だけでございます。
正しい言い分です。ロノウェはベアト側の代行者でしかありません。ロノウェが代行の役を負り、かつバトラ君がベアトを相手として認めないならば、新しい代行者を立てる必要があります。
新しき代行者はおりません。どうかバトラ様、お嬢様を再び、対局の相手とお認めください。
そいつは聞けねえ相談だぜ。あの不愉快な残酷野郎。俺は絶対に対局者だなどと認めない。それを認めないために、俺はこのゲームを降りないんだ。
不愉快な点につきましては、お嬢様に代わりまして謝罪します。また、お嬢様には二度と不愉快な言動を取らぬよう制約させます。
どうだかな。
バトラ君、あの子の師匠として私も謝罪します。よく言って聞かせますので、どうか一度だけ許してやってはくれませんか？
おいおい、よしてくれよ。まるで俺が悪者みてえだぜ。それに、あんたらにいくら謝罪の言葉を聞かされても、そいつを、ベアトが自分の口で言えるってんなら、まあ、耳を貸さねえこともないぜ。
わかりました。それがあの子を再び認めてもらう唯一の条件ならば、あの子に謝罪をさせましょう。ロノウェ、あの子を呼びなさい。よろしいですね、バトラ君。
好きにしろよ。だが、俺が許すと期待するな。呼べよ。あのムカつく魔女。
ありがとうございます。バトラ、ただいま、お呼びいたします。お嬢様、バトラ様がお呼びでございます。
After a few heartbeats, the gold butterflies gathered together in midair and created Beto's form. It was a much more docile appearance than the one she'd made before.
呼んだか？ロノウェ。話は聞いていたはずですよ。あなたの口から何か言うことはありますか？
It looks as though Beto shrunk slightly under Battler's cold gaze. Several times, Beto made an effort to get the words out of her mouth, but that didn't work so well. And she was just as awkward as somebody trying to light a match during a freezing winter with icy hands. Even as she did that, the game board was advancing. In the hall, they just had found the corpses of the new victims and had broken down crying.
Oyaji! キリエさん! うわ
That sucks.
母さん、しっかりして。僕だって、悔しい、悲しい。
Can't even imagine for Ava what that's like.
おそらく即死だったでしょう。
Which time?
たとえ彼らが倒れた直後に我々がここに訪れたとしても、きっと手を。
いいえ、違うわ。きっと生きてたわよ。胸にこんなものを刺されて。うちの人ももがき、もっと早く来ていればきっと助かった。
There's
きっと助かったのよ。
バトラ君も辛いだろうけど、しっかり。
大丈夫だよ。大丈夫だぜ。兄貴。もうちょっとだけ泣かせてくれ。俺が一番マシなんだ。俺が一番悲しくないはずなんだ。だから、もうちょっとだけ泣いたら。大丈夫だから。
そんなことないよ。両親を失った心の痛みはよくわかる。僕には母さんがまだいる。バトラ君よりはるかにマシだ。
Good lord, yeah.
いや、違うぜ。ジョージの兄貴が一番辛いはずなんだ。わかってんだよ。兄貴、ジョージの兄貴が。俺たちの中で一番悲しくて辛いんだ。俺はそれをわかってる。
Well, yeah, his wife, future
だからこれ以
wife.
上、メソメソなんて泣いちゃいけねえんだ。
どうして僕の方が辛いなんて。
俺にとっちゃ、親父もキリエさんも、成人して独り立ちしたら、いつかは別れる人間さ。親である以上、子供より先に死ぬのは宿命だ。それが、少し早くなっちまっただけの話だぜ。だが、兄貴は違うぜ。いつか別れる親だけじゃない。これからの人生をずっと一緒に生きていくはずの、シャノンちゃんまで、失ったんじゃないかよ。
That is a solid point. And he's a lot closer with his dad than Battler is.
赤ん坊の命だって、年寄りの命だって。同じだがよ。それからの人生が長ければ長いほど、一緒に築いてく未来が長ければ長いほど、その死ってのは悲しいものなんじゃねえのかよ。兄貴は、シャノンちゃんと婚約したんだろ。これからの人生と家庭を一緒に築いていこうって約束したんだろ。その未来のデカさが、幸せのデカさがよ、俺の痛みなんかとは比べ物にならねえ。だから、兄貴はもっともっと泣いても許されるはずなんだ。なのに、俺たちいとこの兄貴格だからって、無理に冷静を装って。やめてよ、バトラ君。
Cho's trying to make a calm smile. But already he couldn't stop a single hot tear from leaving a streak down his face.
悲しくないわけがないじゃないか。僕はシャノンと一緒にたくさんの未来を思い、映画きっと100年の人生では叶えきれないくらいの夢を語り合う。その夢の一番最初の籍を入れることさえ叶えられなくて、悲しくないわけがないじゃないか。
それに比べたら俺なんか、だから俺にはこれ以上、泣く資格なんかねえんだ。兄貴だってこらえてるのに、俺にこれ以上の涙を流す資格なんて。
同じだよ。親しい人を失えば、悲しいのは僕もバトラ君も同じだよ。だから、バトラ君が僕より涙を流してはいけないなんてルールはない。そして、僕だって、もうこれ以上、涙をこらえなければならないなんてルールも、ないんだもんね。
兄貴。兄貴。
未来を語り合ったシャノンが死んだ。父さんも死んだ。悲しいな。 悲しいな。
Imagine how, like, I just can't get over how guilty Ava must feel. As Battler and George hugged each other tightly, they cried a waterfall of tears over each other's shoulders for the people who had been so precious to them.
どうして俺が、ジョージの兄貴が一番辛いって言ったか、わかるか？
聞いていたからわかる。その後の人生を共にする時間の長さに、悲しみは比例するとな。
もちろん、それだけじゃ測れねえけどな。俺たち人間は、お前ら魔女とは違う。生きてから死ぬまでという有限の時間をその力の限り生きている。それをないがしろにする奴は許せない。ましてや嘲笑いもて遊ぶような奴は絶対に許せない。お前のような死の概念もめちゃくちゃな奴には理解もできねえだろうがよ。これから生きる時間の長さだけじゃない。一生懸命に生きている奴の人生を嘲笑うこと。これが一番、俺には許せねえんだ。ジョージの兄貴は、がむしゃらに頑張って人生を生きてた。シャノンちゃんと結婚するために、悲壮な覚悟をして、この日に臨んでいたはずなんだ。俺みたいに、久しぶりにいとこと会えるなんて浮かれてたやつとはわけが違
う。しかしだな。
ベアト、今は黙って聞きなさい。
Yeah, don't defend yourself yet.
お前の言い分にも一定の理解はする。お前には自分の復活のためにおかしな碑文に沿った殺人を続ける必要があるってんだろ。だからその範囲内でのお前の殺人はお前の立場の事情を汲み取る限りギリギリの理解はできる。それがお前にとっては必要な行為だからだ。ならそれ以上の不要な行為は全てお前の無意味な残酷趣味ということになる。つまり第一の晩に6人を殺すことまでがお前にとっての必要な行為ならば、顔を砕くとか腹を裂いてお菓子を詰め込むなんて真似は全て全く不必要なお前の残酷趣味だってことになる。俺はお前のこの点について断じて許すことができ、お前はローザおばさんがひどい殺され方を繰り返された時、結局は最後には生き返らせるのだからみたいなことを言ったそうだな。バルギリアに聞いてるぜ。
それはまあ
最後には生き返るなら何度殺してもいいという考えは命をもてあそぶだけの全く不必要な行為ではないのか。殺すなら人思いに殺せ。もてあそぶな。殺さないならいたぶるな。お前は人の命を自在に操れるのをいいことに命の尊厳を忘れてしまった。だから俺は認められないんだ。命の重みを、そして失った時の悲しみを知らない奴を俺は対戦相手だと断じて認められない。
無限の魔法が邪法と言われるゆえんです。無限の魔女に有限の概念はない。壊す、殺すという有限と終焉の概念がないのです。それゆえに無限の魔女は時に生と死の狭間をゴム跳びで遊ぶかのように その行き来を遊び出すようになります。それはとてもとても恐ろしい
Yeah,
こと
they
です。
start playing God.
だから私は無限の魔女として自ら望み、あなたの域まで達しなかったのです。
It was something Virgilia had been trying to tell Beto for a long time, but Beto had been too young and to obediently listen to those words. She had been too wild. She'd been possessed by that detestable pleasure.
壺を割ってはならぬと言われてきた。でも、だからこそ、いつか割ってみたいと思っていた。そして無限の魔法を得て、いくら壊しても好きなだけ元に直せると知ったとき、わらわは壺を壊すことがこれほどまでに楽しく、
それを禁忌の蜜と呼びます。人はその中身に惹かれるのではない。それを封ずる錠前に惹かれるのです。実に嘆かわしいことです。
バルギリアに聞きたい。無限の魔法なんてものがどうしてあるんだ。それは何のためにこの世にあるんだ。
無限の魔法に限らず、魔法はすべて人の世に幸福をもたらすために存在するのです。今さらバトラ君には信じがたいでしょうが、私たち魔女は人の世に恵みを与えるために、人と人ならざる者たちとの架け橋になるべく修行を重ねているのです。
死者を繰り返し蘇らせ、何度もいじめ殺すことで、どう人の世に役立つってんだ。
大切な形見の壺が割れてしまった時、それを直すことで誰もが笑顔を取り戻すならば、私は何度でも魔法にて直すでしょう。しかしそれは壊すために直すのではありません。人に幸福を与えるために蘇らせるのです。
That is a big difference.
だとしたら、ベアト、お前は無限の魔女。失格だな。今、俺は漠然と思ったことがある。どうして俺がお前と、こんなおかしなゲームを延々と続けてるのかだ。これは俺を屈服させるためのゲームじゃない。お前が、本当の意味で、無限の魔女に認められるための試験ではないの
That's
か。
exactly what it is.
知らぬわ。わらわがそなたにゲームを申し込んでいるのは、単なる暇つぶしだ。
That's a lie.
誰の思惑でもないわ。
Say it in red.
俺は今、バルギリアからの魔女の定義を聞いた。それによるならばベアト、お前は魔女ですらない。その修行の途中で、自らの力を誤解した見習いってことになる。
Spitting facts.
これは魔女と人間の戦いのはず。ならば、魔女でないお前に、俺の相手としての資格はない。わかるな。
わらわが、まだ、見習い風情だと、申すか。ならば、わらわはいつ、そなたの対戦相手だと、再び認められるのか。いつ、このゲームを再開できるというのか。
さあな。それは少なくとも、今じゃない。
You still haven't apologized.
お前が俺の言った話をちゃんと理解できて、本当の魔女になった時、俺はお前を再び、ゲームの対戦相手だと認めるだろうよ。
そのような抽象的な言い方ではわからぬ。どうすればお前の許しを超えるのか、はっきりと聞か。
いいや、これで十分だ。あとはお前が考えろ。俺が言いたいのは以上だ。理解ができないなら、バルギリアやロノウェに相談してみろ。 お前みたいなガキンチョは、まず大人の言葉に耳を傾けるところから始めやがれ。ワルギリア、ゲームは一度中断する。ロノベが代行を降りた以上、あとはベアトが対局者としてふさわしい資格を持つのを待つしかない。
了解しました。ベアトがその資格を得たと認められるまでゲームを対局者不在のまま進行させます。ベアトもそれでよろしいですね。
異論はない。わらわは時間とゆっくり考えられる場所が欲しい。これにて席を外してもよいか。
ああ、いいぜ。
それではまたの。
待てよ、そうしょぼくれた顔すんな。
それはすまぬな。わらわは胸の内が全て顔に出る勝負。偽れぬ。
ならまだ構成の余地はあるってことだぜ。一つだけ約束する。俺はお前とのゲームに勝つかもしれないし、負けるか、お前が戻ってこなけりゃ不戦勝ってこともあるだろうよ。
At that point, Battler stopped talking for a second, then spoke forcefully.
しかし絶対に俺からは降りない。お前を不戦勝にだけは絶対にしない。お前が再び俺の好敵手としてそこに座るのも、俺はずっとここで待っている。
バトラ様、
ありがとうな、バトラ。わらわはきっとそなたに認められて戻ってくるぞ。
This is good for Beto, sorry. After showing a hopeful smile for a very short while, Beto vanished. After seeing her expression as she left, Battler was absolutely convinced that her face could not tell lies. My mom cannot tell lies with her face. Makes everything obvious too. The 7 survivors returned to the guest house once again. By now it was clear that those who went outside would not return alive. Rudolph's group had gone with 2 guns and a master key, but those had been lost. It was already clear that those had been stolen by the culprit. Because the shutters were closed on the windows, they couldn't be opened even if that culprit had a master key. The front and back doors that led outside were all sealed by chains, and they were further blocked by sofas and tables. Even if the culprit decided to break through violent means, it wouldn't be easy for them.
台風が今となってはむしろ幸いかもしれんな。もしも晴れていたならゲストハウスに放火するという手もあり得たかもしれん。
I didn't even think of that.
そもそも台風でなかったなら午前中に船が来てたわ。それを不幸中の幸いと言えるかは微妙ね。
Well, that's fair.
エヴァさん、体の具合はいかがですか？無理をされないようにしてください。ありがとう。熱はまだ感じるけど、そんなことを言ってる場合じゃないの。子供のためにも今は寝込んでる場合じゃない。
After crying so much in front of Hideyoshi's corpse, Ava had felt a strong self-awareness of her position as a mother, and her expression conveyed a strong will. In actual fact, her fever still hadn't gone down, and she was aware of that. If she didn't keep a strong hold on herself, she felt as though the fever would make her mind hazy again. By this point, the first floor formed a final line of defense set up by Kraus, Natsui, and Ava. The children and the guest Nanjo had been strongly warned not to go downstairs without taking great care. If the culprit used a ladder or something, it probably wouldn't be impossible for them to attack the second floor. But it wouldn't be easy for them to break those sturdy shutters from such an insecure position. The second floor was relatively safe compared to the first. Battler and George also were to remain on the first floor so that they could fight if the worst happened, but Ava had put a stop to that. In her mind, George was now the only member of her family, It seemed that she didn't want to expose him to the danger of coming downstairs to the first floor. Kurosa and Natsui could understand that feeling. Also, a great deal of time had passed since the siege began. In the second floor cousins' rooms, Battler, George, and Jessica sat dazed. And they didn't even listen to the TV that had been left on. For a while, Nanjo had been with them and had tried to lend them words of encouragement, but when he realized that might actually have the opposite effect, he hid himself in his own room on the second floor. George kept looking dazedly at the photographs inserted in his notebook. It was from the time he had taken the vacation to Okinawa with Shannon. Shannon's happy smile was contained in those photos. Oof. Probably not the best time to look at these. George could remember the temperature and the humidity and the warmth and the strength of the wind. And even what he had been talking about with her at the time those photos had been taken as clearly as though it had been yesterday. So to George, those weren't simply photos, but a door to bring back warm memories. In this room, even though the sound of the typhoon and the TV should have entered George's hearing, it was the scenery of Okinawa that he'd seen with her and her laughing voice that reached his eyes and his ears. George had strived to be reborn after meeting Shannon. He had sworn to separate himself from the timid person that he had once been. Easily caught up in the atmosphere, unable to refuse a request, and easily used by those around him. He had resolved this in himself to become a strong man who would make her life more joyous. Therefore, if he hadn't met Shannon, the man called Ushiromi George would probably lived a very different life. And the George of that different life surely wouldn't have been able to be as excellent a man as he is now. The person I am now exists for Shannon's sake. Now that Shannon is gone, why do I exist? It's completely meaningless, isn't it? He felt a deep, deep sadness as though he himself had been empty. That feeling must have been tormenting him this whole time. However, until Battler mentioned it, he hadn't been aware of the feeling himself. He definitely managed to remember that it shouldn't have been all right for him to cry much, much more. So he cried, just like Battler had. He cried himself dry. By now his eyes were bright red and swollen and he couldn't cry anymore. So George did his best to change his way of thinking. He was not meaningless now, and he should be grateful to Shannon for giving him such character. The dead don't come back to life. He would have to get over being separated from his most beloved person. If he were to chase after Shannon and kill himself, she surely would be deeply dejected. It worked the other way too. If he had died and Shannon chased after him, throwing away her own life, he wouldn't have been able to forgive himself. So he chose to suppress his sadness and anger, and decided to thank her instead. After meeting Shannon, she made his days rich and full, and taught him the meaning of working hard for other people's sakes. As a result, she had shaped him into the kind of person he wanted to be. He wanted to thank her for that. He tried to quell his sadness in this way, but each time he did, he remembered Shannon's smile. He understood it logically. He knew that grieving any more than this would only make her grieve in heaven. But that didn't bring a stop to his sadness. They're really working on the emotion in this one. Okay.
なんで人が死ぬってのはよ、こんなに悲しいんだろうな。
Battler muttered. It was as though he was speaking on behalf of all humans. His question probably hadn't been directed at anyone, but Jessica answered.
別れはどんな形でも
いつも悲しいさ。でもそれが、例えば老いであるとか、何かあらかじめ約束されていて、いつか訪れる別れであると分かっているものは、その悲しみを、長い時間をかけて、あらかじめ薄めておくことができる。それを許されないから、突然の不幸は悲しいんだろうよ。
なるほどな。そりゃ、病気にでもかかって、何年も昏睡状態になってりゃ、少しずつ心の整理もついてくだろうけど、ある日突然じゃ、その暇もねえもんな。
本来なら、数年をかけて薄めるべき悲しみが、一度にそりゃ、辛いわけさ。時には、人の生涯に傷を残すほど深い悲しみを与えることもあるかもしれない。
生涯に傷を残すほど、か。
じいさまのオカルト趣味もさ、そう囁かれてたんだよな。例のベアトリーチェって愛人を大昔に亡くして、それが悲しくて立ち直れなくて、それで死者を蘇らせるためのオカルトの研究にそう囁かれてた。
だとしたら、じいさまは最後の土壇場で、その奇跡を成し遂げたな。犯人は蘇ったベアトリーチェで、じいさまは殺される瞬間に再会できたってことになるぜ。自分で蘇らせて、それに殺されるとは皮肉な話さ。
それでも、おじいさまは会えたんだろうね。人生の半分を賭して、もう一度会いたいと願った女性に、わずかなひとときとはいえ、再会できたんだろうね。
丸焼きにされちまったけどな。人生の半分をかけた研究にしては、ちょいと割の合わない成果だろうぜ。
そんなことはないよ。たとえほんのひとときであったとしても、愛した女性に再会できたおじいさまは、幸せだったはずさ。仮に、生命の摂理に逆らった罪を、神に咎められて、その身を焼かれ、地獄に落とされたとしても、その見返りの再会が、ほんのわずかな時間だったとしてもね。
上司兄さん。
神の怒りに触れて、この身をわずかな時間でもいいから、シャノンを再び蘇らせてくれるなら、僕は残りの人生すべてを、おじいさまと同じ研究に捧げるよ。5分でいいから、シャノンともう一度言葉を交わしたい。1分でもいいから。
Yeah, I've never loved someone that
それと
much.
引き換えに、すべての人生を捧げても、僕は構わない。
兄貴。
When Battler and Jessica realized that their pointless discussion was causing George pain, they could do nothing more than shut their mouths. George directed his thoughts to Kinzo's life. He sacrificed half of his life to research that no one understood. And on the last day of life, he revived the person he loved most, and probably succeeded in his reunion in his final moments. George didn't know how much time they had together. He didn't know if they'd be given an hour or just 5 minutes. However, that moment must have been enough to reward him for all those months of research. Years. Even though he spent dozens of years to achieve it, that small amount of time was probably more than worth it to him. I agree. Until today, I never believed in the occult, magic, or anything. Somewhere in my heart, I even made fun of grandfather's research, thinking of it as nothing more than pastime. However, I won't make fun of it anymore. No, to the contrary, I believe strongly it's real. If the power of belief could create miracles, I'll probably throw away all of my studies up until today, spending the rest of my life from today onward studying magic. Give me the power of magic, and give me the miracle that'll let me see Shannon again. That is dangerous.
ごめんよみんな。僕もどうかしてる。魔法で死者が蘇るくらいだったら、世界中の人々が魔法を学ぶだろうね。でも、現実にはそんなことはない。誰も学ばない。死者が魔法では蘇らないって知っているから。ごめんよ。妙なことを言い出して。僕のせいでおかしな空気になっちゃったね。
I mean, the fact that like 13 people have already died might also be contributing to it.
みんなだって辛いだろうに。
Maybe not 13. It's 10 already,
気を
I
使わせ
think.
てごめん。
Even if I did it to divert myself from my sadness, maybe I did say something strange. If I keep talking about stuff that's so weird, I'm sure it wouldn't do anything good for their sadness. But that doesn't mean I can bear this silence.
僕は下に行ってもう一杯コーヒーをもらってくる。うちの母さん、コーヒーの入れ方にはこだわりがあるんだよ。みんなもおかわりはいるかい？
Battler and Jessica lightly shook their heads. Without pressing them any further, I took my mug and left the room. The shutters were all closed in the hallway, so the corridor was very dim. I tried visiting Dr. Nanjo's room, asking if he wanted coffee, but he said he didn't need any either. It seems my mother's orthodox method of making coffee isn't universally appreciated. One time I made some for Shannon, but she told me that while it was delicious, it was a little strong.
Shannon.
That's no good. Even though I left the room to change my mood, that image of Shannon's face filling my head hasn't faded in the slightest. I keep seeing those fun days with her more and more vividly, and it's saddening that I never got a chance to see her dead face. Ugh. According to our parents, she was apparently killed with something like a gun or a spear. I'm sure they were just trying to console me, but they had said that her dead face had been very beautiful and peaceful. I wonder if she had the engagement ring I gave her last night on her finger. If she had accepted my engagement, she should have had it on the ring finger on her left hand. Last night we were both on the edge of losing it, and not calm at all. Shannon accepted my engagement pretty courageously, but she might have regretted it as a rash action once she cooled her head. She might have taken the ring off. I wonder if she has a ring on now. I want to be sure of at least that much. I want to know how she felt at the very end. But even if I do confirm that, it doesn't mean she'll come back. I wonder what will happen to her body. After the autopsy, it will probably be immediately cremated. Then I'll never be able to see her face, even her dead face, for all eternity.
僕はシャノンを失ったショックで少しおかしくなってるのかな。
Yeah, and you lost your dad. I don't want her body to be burned. If she's burned and turned to ash, never again will it be possible for her to revive. They say that cremation is frowned upon in Western tradition because on the day of resurrection there would be no body to revive. Because of that, it seems like great criminals in Western history were often cremated after execution as punishment, and their ashes were sometimes scattered in rivers and such. In other words, to Western people, death is nothing more than a sleep until resurrection. It is essential that the corpse is left after dead.
つまりそれは西洋人は死者が蘇る奇跡の存在を知っていたからなんだ。でも日本にはその奇跡がなかったから焼いてしまうんだ。
I would say it's mostly because of Jesus, but now I understand. I understand why grandfather idolized the Western occult. That was his only reason from the very beginning. Just to revive the person dear to him, grandfather spent the rest of his remaining life research on the Western occult. Their situation surrounding us is abnormal. Grandfather did revive his beloved Beatrice, and that Beatrice has carried out a terrible serial murder, with linked closed rooms that force us to conclude that the magic was used. The Golden Witch Beatrice, the incarnation of the miracle of the Western occult, and also the culprit who killed Shannon. She is an entity I should hate, and yet, for some reason, I want to cling to her. I wonder if Shannon could be revived with the magic of miracles, which grandfather bet his life on. According to the legend of the Ushiromiya family, grandfather met her long ago, was given a vast quantity of gold. Then, if I also met with her, instead of gold, would she give me Shannon's life? As collateral, I don't care what sort of devil's contract she imposed. I wouldn't mind sacrificing all of my remaining life. Something bad, I feel like, is going to happen with him. George probably couldn't believe or realize that his voiceless wish was heard by the witch herself, who stood right behind him. Yep. Beatrice had been listening to the entire discussion between the children just now in the cousin's room. Battler had told her that she didn't know the value of human life, and wanting to understand that in her own way, she had stealthily visited, listening in on their discussion.
それが願いだというのか。それを叶えれば、わらわは魔女だと認められるのか。
Beato looked at the palms of both of her hands. She had handed over most of her once surging magical power when the new witch succeeded the name of the Endless Witch. Of course, her current power still made her worthy of being called a witch, but it couldn't be anything compared to her previous strength.
無限の魔法などなくとも、わらわは千年に名を轟かす大魔女であるぞ。死者を蘇らすなど、
I don't know.
造作もないことよ。
Inside her head, she thought of several magical steps she could take to revive the dead. Even magic that should be easy in the past would be difficult with her current power. She thought of something, then clicked her tongue, then did it over and over. In the end, she finally thought of a single spell. But that was a spell that she couldn't use by herself. It was a spell that witches with weak power use, one that relied on the aid of others. In the past, Beato looked down upon that type of magic, therefore she frantically tried to search for any conceivable alternative. But in the end, she couldn't think of one and slumped over in self-derision. Then, careful not to surprise him, she softly called out. Softly to George's heart.
Ushiromiya George, わらわの声が聞こえるか。
聞こえるとも。
I wonder if he's gonna get Lambda and,
あなたは誰だい？本当に魔女のベアトリーチェ？それとも僕の悲しみが生んだ幻想なのか？
Burn and Lambda
もしも
Delta
前
could
者だ
probably
った
do
な
it.
ら、僕の願いを聞いてほしい。そして後者なら、僕をそっとしておいてほしい。
Their conversation in a mental world was a lot like having one in a dream. When you dream, haven't you ever had this experience of casually accepting something that would have been absurd in the real world? The conversation in this world was like that. So even though a witch appeared and started talking to George, he was not surprised.
わらわが黄金の魔女。本来わらわとそなたはこうして会話を交わすことなどできぬ。しかしそなたがわらわのことを強く意識し、会話をこうして互いのチャンネルを合わせることができる。
シャノンを殺したのがあなたなのか？あなたを名乗る何者かの仕業なのか？ただあなたが本当の魔女として存在しているならば、どんな対価にも応じる。僕の命を望むなら、今すぐどうかシャノンを生き返らせてほしい。それが無理ならせめて、わずかの間、お願いだ。
対価はいらぬ。その願い、叶えて使わす。
本当にシャノンを。
だが反言の魔法を扱うには今のわらわには魔力が足りぬ。だからそなたの手を借りねばならぬ。
僕にできることならどんなことでも。 それが、僕の心臓を今すぐこの場で取り出すことであったとしても、僕は躊躇しない。
She didn't ask for your, for you to die. I think taking your heart out is probably not.
そんなものいらぬというのに、わらわは魔法を唱え、さすれば冥府の扉に隙間ができよう。
The hell?
だが、今のわらわには、その隙間よりシャノンの魂を連れ出せるほどの力はない。しかし、シャノンのことを強く思うそなたなら、その思いを魔力に変えて、彼女の魂を必ずや連れ戻せるだろう。どうだ？わらわを手伝うか？
手伝うとも。シャノンの命が蘇るなら、僕は何を失うことも恐れない。
George's fist shook in silence. Then he slowly came to his senses. He had been absent-mindedly standing near the window in the hall the whole time, his mug still in his hand. And the witch from his dream was still there.
そんな、夢じゃない。
静かにせよ。今のわらわはとても脆い。この上さらに他の人間まで現れたら、姿をそなたの願いは叶えるから、今は沈黙せよ。よいか。
I feel like some weird shit's about to happen. George covered his mouth with both hands, nodding enthusiastically several times. In the instant, he almost dropped the mug he was holding. George frantically juggled around and caught it. He was afraid that if it fell on the floor and made a sound, the witch's form might disappear like a bubble popping. Probably would. He softly set the mug on the floor and stared at the witch in front of him again. Her form didn't disappear. It wasn't a dream.
さあ、シャノンが眠る客室へ行くぞ。そなたの思いの力にて、彼女の魂を連れ戻すのだ。
行くってどうやって？下には母さんたちがいる。表へ出るのを許してくれるわけがない。それにあなたはさっき、他の人間が現れたら姿を保てないと言わなかったかい？
そういえばそうだったな。
Oh, well, fuck. That's not good.
下にはクラウスたちがおったか。それでは確かに下へ降りられぬな。ならば、一階へ降りずに屋敷へ行けばいいではないか。簡単な話よ。
Beto laughed as though she had a pleasant prank. And with her gold pipe, she lightly tapped the window with its shutter closed. When she did, 3 golden butterflies appeared for the pipe and opened the lock and window as though melting it. Then the window opened without a sound, and the shutter beyond it was exactly the same. The glass had set itself also without making a sound, and it quietly opened. The window opened, exposing the wind and rain outside the mansion. Perhaps because of the direction or something related to the construction of the building, the wind did not blow inside. Because of that, for a while, George felt as though this entrance that opened to the outside was like a dream or an illusion, that he couldn't accept it as real.
さあ行くぞ。ついてまいる。
Beto gently floated upwards. It was a natural action, like that of a diver enjoying an underwater stroll. It made it easy to believe that if you acted as she did, you too might be able to float in the sky just as though you were swimming through the water. No, George did believe that. So without thinking, just as she had done, he also, gently, as though swimming in the water, lifted his feet. I was gonna laugh if he fell on the ground.
やるではないか。わらわが説明するよりも早く空を舞うことを覚えたか。
George was shocked to find himself floating in midair like he was swimming. Of course, Beto was also shocked that George, who shouldn't have been able to use magic, had figured out how to do just that by instinct.
空が飛べるなんて、泳げるなんて。
理屈を考えてはならぬ。それが自然なことであると受け入れよ。ニュートンとかアインシュタインとか人間たちの競技を思い出してはならぬぞ。特に高き空を飛んでいるときはな、墜落する未熟な魔女も時におる。
あるがままを受け入れる。あるがままを受け入れる。
George repeated those words over and over. He must not deny magic no matter what. Denying that would be like throwing away what might be his first and last chance to revive Shannon. However, compared to Beto, who was elegantly drifting like smoke, George's movements clearly resembled someone underwater. Therefore, he didn't act like he was kicking his feet in water every once he'd be caught by a force of gravity bit by bit.
わらわが初めて空を舞った時よりは上出来であると褒めておく。行くぞ。ついてまいる。
When Beto beckoned to George, she gently flew into the stormy sky. It was just like a scene from a fairy tale. The scene unfolding before George's eyes felt like an entirely extension of his dream.
空を飛べるのはすごいけど、すごい風と雨だ。
なんだ、雨と風に苛まれるのか。それを防ぐ魔法を教えてもよいが、今のそなたには早いし、今はそれを習う時間を割くのも惜しかろう。
ええ、僕が必要としている魔法はそれじゃない。
George wore a strong-willed gaze, refusing to let the wind and rain get to him.
見えてきたぞ、屋敷だ。もう少し頑張れよ。今落ちればバラの茂みだぞ。
The undulating rose garden was beneath the witch in George's gazes. The illusion-like scene no longer surprised George. Only the gradually approaching mansion was reflecting in his glasses.
シャノ、待ってて。必ず君を蘇らせてみせる。
I knew she'd be waiting for them. At that time, the cruel new witch could be seen staring at the guest house from a different direction. Oh, location.
あと残すは第7第8の番だけね。あと2人で先代のババアの義理はおしまいだわ。クラウスと夏日を殺す。夫婦仲良くね。にひ標的はどうかに。ゲストハウス1階ロビーにて標的2名と後ろ宮エヴァを捕捉。反魔法力測定。410へデータリンク。410データ受領。反魔法力は極めて小。エヴァさえ席を外せばまな板の上のマグロにアワビです。にひひひひいかがしますか、大ベアトリーチェ卿。ご命令をいただければすぐにも狙撃いたします。どうかご命令を。ほんとにあんたたちは便利な家具ね。死体をほじるしか能のない中古家具どもとは大違いだわねえ。シアスタ姉妹、またあなたたちの手際を見せてちょうだい。攻撃準備よ。 死体はまた運び出してね。たっぷり遊んであげるんだから。文句はなしよ、ロノウェイ。
はい、かしこまりました。
At that moment, the witch noticed something. It was tough. It was as though some presence had disappeared. Was it her imagination?
今、何か気配を感じなかった？誰か感じた人いる？申し訳ありません。私は何も気づきませんでした。お許しを。私たち、ゲストハウスを観測中でしたから、周辺監視はオフにしてます。にひ。ルシファーちゃんは何か気配感じた？
Just for an instant, Lucifer glanced at Ronov, asking whether she should answer honestly or not. Ronov gave a small nod in response.
いいえ、申し訳ございません、ベアトリーチェ様。
He definitely noticed Beatrice.
私たちは何も。中古家具ゆえ、愚鈍なことをお許しください。
そう。大悪魔のあなたがそう言うなら、きっと私の気のせいなんでしょうね。
The witch persistently stared in the direction the presidents had disappeared to. That was where the rose garden lay, and beyond that she could see the mansion's dark silhouette created by lightning. It took some time before she pushed her unsatisfied feelings aside, and once again faced the guest house. So this might sabotage her whole plan. Because she won't know that Shannon's alive and they can get. Shannon's actually strong too. The guest house lobby was wrapped in silence. The strings of tension binding Krause, Natsuya, and Ava had already loosened, and they were completely worn out, with their minds beginning to waver. Every once in a while they would stand up and walk around pointlessly as though fighting their drowsiness.
大丈夫ですか、エヴァさん。やはり無理をせず、休んでいてください。大丈夫だって言ってるわ。もう大人は私たち3人しかいないのよ。休んでる暇なんかないわ。石にかじりついてでも、ここを死守するわよ。
She spoke bravely, but she couldn't hide her rough breathing. It seemed that the fever which had been calmed with medicine for a short time had returned. It was obvious that Ava's health was not good.
無理はするな。せめて目を閉じていたまえ。もし起こさねばならぬときは、必ず起こしてやるから。
だから平気だって言ってるわ。
You're about to pass out. Okay, calm down, sister. It seems she was already unwilling to budge. Krause and Natsuya realized even if they had talked to her any more when she was like this, it wouldn't reach her ears. So without saying any more, they decided to let her be. To Ava right now, even having an argument like that would be burdensome. It would probably be better for her body if she just sat there with her mouth closed. In truth, Ava was one step from being beaten down by drowsiness. Perhaps she shot them back with temper because she was trying to rouse herself and throw off her sleepiness. The clock would be pointing at 6 in the afternoon very soon. She had several snacks to distract herself from her drowsiness so that she didn't feel hungry. But now the lack of sleep made her feel like it was 6 in the morning and not the afternoon. Even supposing that the boat came precisely at 9 in the morning tomorrow, they still had 12 more hours to go. It was an overwhelmingly long stretch of time. What? Long, painful, hot. Even the sound of the clock torments my body now. In times like this, when that person puts his hand on my forehead, the fever fades at once. But that person no longer exists. As Ava's mind grew foggy, she was once again gripped by a deep sadness. She had already cried herself dry. Even so, the sadness of losing her beloved husband had not been exhausted.
私は間違っていたんだわ。どうして？
The new witch and Ava were fundamentally the same being. If Ava talked to her, she would always respond.
私は、後ろ宮家の当主の座さえ得られれば、それで満足のはずだった。それが、あの黄金の山を見た途端に欲が増えたの。あの黄金の山を独り占めしたい気持ちに駆られた。それは恥じることでも何でもないわ。だって、後宮家の当主として当然の権利じゃない。他の誰にも黄金の一かけらだって譲るものかってのよ。私がその誘惑にとらわれたから、あなたは、私の少女時代の心であると同時に。
She told Natsui and Kraus about it if it would lose this Ava's power.
自分勝手でしかない。私のよこしまな心でもあった。そのあなたが、あの黄金の山によって芽生えた私の愚かな欲望のせいで、私の胸という卵の殻を破り、この世に生まれ出てしまった。あなたを産んだのは私の責任。なら、私が殺したローザとマリアも、そして、ルドルフとキリエと秀吉もあなたの責任ってことになるわ。どうしてうちの人まで殺したのよ。どうして秀吉を殺す気はなかったわ。だって、うるさくてしつこかったんだもの。その意味では私たちの、いえ、あなたの責任ね。あんなのを旦那に選んだあなたの責任だわ。
Jeez.
あなたみたいな子供にあの人の良さはわからないわよ。あなた。何よ。私たちは魔法で夢を叶えたのよ。碑文の謎を解いたわ。そして黄金を見つけ、当主の指輪を手にしたわ。すべての夢を叶えきったわ。それがなんで不満なの？それだけがすべての夢なんかじゃないわ。あの人と素敵な人生を歩んで、ジョージに素晴らしい人生を託す。妻として、母として。それなのにそれは、あなたが大人になってから勝手に増やした夢だわ。私たちの夢じゃない。だからあなたは子供なのよ。自分さえ良ければいいの？そうよ。すべて私が悪いのよ。あの時、ローザの言うことにどうして私は反抗したの？どうして兄弟みんなに黄金を見つけたと発表できなかったの？すべて私が醜いから。黄金を独り占めしたくて芽生えさせたよこしまな心が、あなたを孵化させてしまった。ひどい嫌われようだわ。私たちは二人で後宮エヴァなのに。いいえ、もう違うわ。そしてそれはあなたが言ったのよ。私は後宮エヴァ、そしてあなたは黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェよ。だからもう消えて。魔女なんておとぎ話の中にしか存在できない妄想よ、幻想よ。あなたなんか消えてしまえ。二度と私の前に現れないで。ああ、そう。わかったわ。あなたの前から消えてあげるわ。そして私は、もう後宮エヴァじゃない。これからは、黄金の魔女、ベアトリーチェよ。もう好き勝手に遊んでやるんだから。
I don't even know she's keeping being Beatrice through this whole
あんた
episode.
なんて知らないわ。
Or chapter or whatever.
ヘスでも噛んで勝手に死んじゃえば。
After having a very childlike tantrum, the witch who had once been another Ava vanished. Only Ava was left behind in the darkness, and she questioned herself.
私があの人を
Yeah.
私が殺してしまったの？
She could no longer answer that question herself. Ew. It seemed that half asleep she had gotten into some saliva caught in her windpipe just as she was dozing off. Ava suddenly started coughing.
大丈夫かエヴァ。夏希、水を頼む。
はい。大丈夫だってば。ちょっとむせちゃっただけなんだから。
Ava pushed away Natsui's hand as she tried to rub her back and unsteadily rose to her feet.
顔洗ってくるわ。
Oh, well, shit.
ごめんなさいね。寝ちゃってたわ。戻ってきたらまたコーヒーを入れるわね。特に濃い。明日の朝まで眠気が来なくなるようなやつを。
Yeah, but you guys are probably going to get diarrhea from it.
頼む。ゴーダの入れるコーヒーよりお前が入れるコーヒーの方が私の好みに合うからな。
お世辞でも嬉しいわ。すぐ戻るわ。
Ava exited the lobby, heading for the bathroom. Cress and Natsui watched over her frail back.
あなたもあれだけ犬猿の中だったエヴァさんに気を使うこともあるのですね。
本来兄とはこういうものではないのか
ね。ええ、それで正しいと思います。
Let's not go.
エヴァに限らん。ルドルフにもローザにも。私がした兄らしいことといえば、それを王兵に。
Oh, wow, okay.
彼らをいじめただけだ。父のようになりたくて、私なりに必死だった。だが、いつもそれは及ばず、そのはけ口を彼らに向けてしまった。
Dang, he's freaking reflecting on himself? I didn't expect this.
それは言い訳にならん。
At this point, this isn't even like a chapter about him, really.
まだ傷が癒えぬほどに深い心の傷を負わせてしまっただろう。悔いているが、今さらそれを詫びたところで、その傷が癒えるわけもない。
It would mean a lot, probably.
あなたがその気持ちを今だけでなく持ち続け、その気持ちはきっと他の兄弟たちにも伝わりますよ。
今となっては他の兄弟もエヴァを残すのみだがね。
もしあなたとあなたのご兄弟が生まれた家が後ろ宮家でさえなかったなら、もっともっと普通な楽しい兄弟の関係であったでしょうに。
それを言ってはならん。エヴァは生涯私を憎み続けるだろう。そしてその資格がある。私はそれを甘んじて受け止めるつもりだ。
So there's going to be like a time crunch between Beatrice reviving Shannon and Ava Beatrice killing these two.
あなた。
エヴァ、すまん。もちろん許さなくていい。
もちろん許さないわ。何を今さら。
Oh shit.
悪いと思ったなら今すぐへそでも噛んで死んじゃえば。やっちゃえ、シエスタ姉妹。45、射撃許可治療。射撃曲線再確認。飛行誤差修正。410へデータリンク。410データ受領。射撃許可確認。
Together, the sisters released the magical bowstring they had readied. A beautiful tail trailed behind the golden arrow as it drew a lovely curve as it flew. It was just like a gold snake. It skillfully avoided the groves of trees and flew toward the front door of the guest house. Then it flew into the keyhole of the door and snuck into the guest house without any problem at all. Gold Snake raced down the hall smoothly, yet as fast as an arrow. Right before it was the door to the lobby. When it flew into the keyhole, Krause and Natsui were all ready. For an instant, Krause thought he saw a gold-colored sparkle in the keyhole in the door. However, at the same time, he straightened his eyes to see what it was. The sparkle bent like a whip and attacked, whipping itself around Krause's neck. Just looking at it, the gold snake seemed very supple. However, it was as though a wire had tightened around Krause's neck. See, now Ava Beatrice's thing, because she's not using the Sisters of Purgatory right away, I don't think she is. She's going to keep torturing them. She might end up messing up her time limit. Or not killing them the right way before Shannon is revived. Oops. Shoot, excellent.
45命中および死亡確認牽引曲線形成補正点修正410へデータリンク410データ受領死体牽引開始
Corpse towing
2匹も釣れたに2匹
The gold snake began to drag Krause and Natsui back. They slipped through the door to the corridor, dragging the bodies, gradually increasing in speed, and rapidly pulled them outside the guest house. So the lobby was silent as though nothing had happened. As though Krause and Natsui hadn't been there since the beginning. Only the sound of wind and rain remained as though they were playing dumb and pretending to be the only ones there.
ごめんなさい
Can you imagine coming back and there's just
今コーヒーを入れるわね
Ava returned from the bathroom, but no one was in the lobby. Even though they had supposedly been at the sofa until that moment, she had choked and gone to the bathroom. They were gone as if they had been an illusion from the very beginning.
不用心ね二人揃ってどこに行っちゃったの
Ava put her hand on the sofa as though acting out a scene from a detective novel. She felt the warmth that meant they had been sitting there until a short while ago. Maybe they went to do the rounds or something. For the time being, Ava sat down and waited for their return. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. But yeah, this is a great episode. I did not expect like Beatrice kind of coming to possibly save the day. Beato, yeah, if she revives Shannon, it does give them an opportunity to kind of turn the tables, because Ava Beatrice's biggest weakness is that she's so like I'm trying to think of the word, consumed by her like joy of killing, that she'll just get sucked into killing Natsui and Krause over and over again in weird and demented ways, that I feel like Shannon will be able to be revived and she'll be confused that the game's not over by the time she's the Purgatory Sisters. And then it may be a showdown from there. I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching.